3,000 Hamas terrorists came over the border in wave after wave, and they attacked and murdered and did other terrible things to as many civilians as they could get their hands on. They kidnapped babies, Holocaust survivors. They murdered hundreds of people at a music festival. Nothing that they did that day can be categorized as legitimate resistance or military action. Do you agree?
I hear you, but you need to hear me.
Yeah, but you agree with me?
That's the 7th of October.
Yeah, but you agree with me?
Targeting civilians is absolutely, utterly rejected.
In this video, Piers Morgan gets exposed by this Palestinian ambassador on his own show. And like, you can immediately see Piers trying to do that thing where he just boxes Zomlot into a simple yes or no condemnation, but Ambassador Zomlot just completely flips it on him. He stays composed and rejects targeting civilians outright, and then just, you know, hits Piers with the uncomfortable truth about how Palestinian lives get treated as less valuable in these conversations. And that was just the start. Because later on, Zomlot digs way deeper into Netanyahu's strategy, the UK's role, and what real accountability would look like. So make sure to watch till the end to see how Ambassador Zomlot exposes Piers Morgan on his own show.
And we, the Palestinian people, must always return the moral high grounds. Our issue, the heart of our cause, is that we as civilians, defenseless, have been targeted for 100 years. So we better not do it ourselves. And we better stick to the one thing that we're calling for, which is international law. But on the 6th of October, Piers, the UN and other international organizations declared it was the deadliest year for Palestinian children in the West Bank, not even in Gaza. You didn't bring me here. The world was not all over the place to discuss the murder of Palestinian children in the West Bank.
I accept that.
That is our issue. That's number one.
I accept that.
That is our issue. And since the 7th of October, you've been wanting me to condemn.
Yes.
And we have no issues with condemnation. We have been doing that all along. But the Israeli ambassador was sitting here, Piers, last week. And all that conversation, still you did not ask her to condemn. So what is it about Palestinians? Do you or the mainstream media see Israeli Jewish life to be more of value than Palestinian lives? That's a question. And that's why I, as a representative of the Palestinian people, my people, I refuse wholeheartedly that our children is less of a human being than theirs.
I agree.
And I tell you, one Palestinian child for us, is worth the world.
I agree. And I would go further, and I would say that not only is, of course, a Palestinian child worth as much as any child in the world, but actually you should be entitled, Palestinians, all Palestinians, should be entitled to the same human rights as me or Israelis or anybody else.
Oh, true.
And that has been a fundamental problem.
But we are not.
You're not.
We are not. What do you do? And you keep saying, I don't know. No. You are a prominent person.
I haven't said I don't know.
No, what do we do?
I've said I believe what's happened is a form of occupation.
Okay, so this is where Zomlot just really takes over the whole conversation. Piers is doing his classic thing, pushing that yes or no condemn Hamas line over and over again, like he's trying to corner him. But Zomlot just doesn't fall for it. He's calm, and he says straight up that targeting civilians is unacceptable. But then he immediately pivots. And that's the part that really hits. He reminds Piers, and everyone watching, that Palestinians have been the defenseless ones, the ones getting targeted for 100 years. It's like he's saying, yeah, I'll answer your question, but you need to face the full context. And when he brought up that UN report, it's just straight up brutal. He points out that literally the day before October 7th, the UN declared 2023 the deadliest year for Palestinian kids in the West Bank, not even Gaza. And his point is clear. Nobody was inviting him on shows then. Nobody was outraged then. And you can actually see it land. Because Piers admits it. True, I accept that. That's not something Piers says often. Which tells you how solid Zomlot's point was here.
However, let me turn that slightly. Because since 2005-06, Hamas has been running Gaza. And it's had billions of dollars come in. A lot of it with the tacit encouragement of Benjamin Netanyahu, who wanted to play divide and rule between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. That's no great secret.
Netanyahu, you mean?
Yeah, and that backfired.
And you are aware that Netanyahu allowed for millions of dollars.
Yes, I just
every
said
month.
that.
And you know why he did that?
Because he wanted to divide and rule the two Palestinian camps, and he thought that was the best way of making Israel safer. It turned out to be a catastrophic error of judgment on his part, for which he will one day be held accountable.
Can I correct that? It was not just an error of judgment. It was his instinct and his DNA.
Yes, I agree.
It's not just a judgment.
No, but I agree with you.
The DNA of him and his clique is the ethnic cleansing. And for them, the prevention of the Palestinian national government of returning to Gaza, the continuation of Hamas and funding of Hamas was a way of advancing that strategy of blocking a Palestinian state and then committing the annihilation and the extermination they are doing right now.
I agree that has been I believe, Netanyahu's view the whole time. That's why he encouraged this. However, let me throw it back at you now. Hamas took that money, and what do they do with it? They seem to have built a highly sophisticated, very large tunnel system, which when they unleashed their terror attacks on October the 7th, Hamas, were able to hide safely in there as the population in Gaza, innocent women, children, others, grandparents, were left to be the targets of Israel's retribution for those attacks on their people. And they knew when they launched the October 7th attacks exactly what was going to come back. They took refuge safely in the tunnels. They were okay. They left their people to be killed. Now, I'm not wrong, am I?
That's why I started the conversation about a Palestinian national conversation, revision. When I started talking about international law and armed resistance, we Palestinians have come to the conclusion now that arms resistance is a right, not an obligation. And given the situation, it is not the most effective way of gaining our rights, not even against the military establishment. Given the direct tacit support of the US, as you know, and the rest of the West, we are not just fighting the Israeli military. So perhaps we need to collectively think about the power of mass non-violent movement. We tried it in the first intifada, and it was very draining morally, politically, militarily, economically to Israel, as you remember and you have read in the past. We need to apply and utilize this unprecedented international public opinion support for us. I just came back from Westminster School. I had just left a meeting with a senior British official in 10 Downing Street. I left and I saw this huge red line surrounding the British Parliament. I approached, and there were thousands upon thousands of British people holding this red line, telling their government, if you are not showing a red line for Israel, we are showing a red line for you and for Israel, for the government and for Israel. And I went in and I saw the depth of support. And this has become, after almost 20 months, the largest and the longest British solidarity movement in the history of this country.
Actually, you know what it reminds me of? And I don't think it is.
And Shabu, I respect.
I can remember one larger one, because I was editor of the Daily Mirror at the time, and it was the marching through London of nearly 2 million people against the Iraq war, which I opposed when I was the editor. Yes. So it reminded me
You did, but that movement went on for a few months.
Yeah.
This is going for almost 2 years.
Do you think the UK government doing enough, in your opinion, to curb what Netanyahu is doing?
No, the British people are doing a lot, and the pressure is on them, and the UK government by far is not doing enough.
Zomlot just absolutely tears apart Piers' framing of Netanyahu here. Piers tries to play it like Netanyahu just made some catastrophic error of judgment by helping funnel some money into Hamas. But Zomlot pushes back hard, saying no, this wasn't a mistake at all. It was deliberate. He calls it Netanyahu's instinct and his DNA to divide Palestinians, keep Hamas in place, and block any chance of a Palestinian state. That's such a sharp reframing because it takes what Piers wants to treat as a blunder and exposes it as a calculated strategy. Ethnic cleansing by design, not accident. And then when Piers pivots back to the tunnels, like will Hamas built this massive tunnel system and left civilians to face the retribution, Zomlot doesn't dodge. He takes it head on and makes a bigger point, that Palestinians are at a crossroads, and armed resistance isn't necessarily the most effective path anymore. He brings up the power of mass non-violent movements, referencing how draining the first intifada was for Israel and highlighting the unprecedented global solidarity they're now seeing. That imagery of him leaving Downing Street and seeing thousands of people forming a red line around the parliament, that hits hard. It's him showing that the fight for Palestine isn't just in Gaza or the West Bank anymore, it's international.
What would you like them to do?
The number one, arms embargo. This is a legal obligation. Already in January last year, a year and a half almost, the ICJ said it is plausible that Israel is committing genocide, and therefore we, the judges of the world, this is the courts, the highest world court, we, the judges of the world, decided to place Israel on trial for genocide. Since then, the conversation should have been over. Few months later, the same court came up with a verdict about Israel's presence in the occupied territory, saying it's unlawful, it must end in the shortest period, and the General Assembly, relying on that, said in 1 year time. The conversation about what is the legal responsibility, legal before political, of the UK is clear. Full arms embargo. Suspension not of trade talks, but of trade itself, until Israel ends the genocide, until Israel abides by international law. Thirdly, the banning of all the illegal settlement products. I mean, how on earth you describe them to be illegal war crimes, and you are still importing them and showing them in UK shelves? The banning of UK companies from profiting and operating in occupied territory. Is that too difficult to ask? And of course, the immediate recognition of the state of Palestine. This is a major thing. You know, this is not a gift or a favor. It's an inalienable right. We are a people, ancient, rooted on our land. We have the territory very well defined by numerous international resolutions, and we have a functioning government. The question was never, why should the UK recognize it?
Well, when you hang on one second. Let me jump in there. When you say you have a functioning government, there's clearly no functioning government in Gaza right now. Hamas are ostensibly still the government, but they're not a functioning government. Do you accept that? Let me ask you a straight question. Do you accept that after October the 7th, Hamas can have no place in any future government in Gaza for the Palestinians after this war? Do you accept that?
It's not just me. Hamas itself has accepted.
But do you agree that cannot be allowed?
Of course. And that's, you asked me about Hamas. I represent the state of Palestine.
Yes, I know.
Okay? And the people of Palestine.
Yes.
Hamas is a political group. And guess what? We have more than 20 political groups. If you want the opinion of the state and the government of Palestine, Palestine needs a government that represents the Palestinian people, represent the unity of our people, the unity of our geography, Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and the unity of our political system. So far, our government, the existing government, is made of technocrats. Not Fatah, not Hamas, not anybody. The committee that we agreed with Egypt and other mediators to form to care for Gaza, administer Gaza for an interim period, was made of technocrats. And the proposition is no political. So this is of course we agree on this. This is not the conversation.
What?
And Netanyahu is saying this as a condition, knowingly that this has been done. He is not interested in ending the war.
Well, the other condition he keeps saying, and I completely agree with him, Hamas must release the remaining hostages. Why have they not released them? And are you prepared right now to call for them to immediately release all remaining hostages?
Do you think Netanyahu is interested in his hostages? Seriously, Piers? They would have been home long ago. You know that. The US proposed a deal in January. It included the release of all hostages and the exchange of hostages. I've said it before, I say it again. Israel has taken thousands of Palestinian hostages without trial, without charge. 300 of them are children, for God's sake, which is illegal in international law. So of course we need to see our hostages being released as well. But Netanyahu was not interested in the hostages.
So Zomlot just ends this by laying out exactly what the UK should be doing. An arms embargo, banning salmon products, cutting off companies profiting from the occupation, and recognizing Palestine as a state. And he frames it perfectly. These aren't favors, they're legal obligations. Piers tries to push the Hamas angle again, but Zomlot just doesn't blink, making it clear that Hamas has no place in any future Palestinian government and calling out Netanyahu for dragging out the hostage situation for his own agenda. It's pretty clear who had facts and who was leaning on talking points here. Zomlot explores just how shallow that media framing really is, and honestly, that bias just speaks for itself. And speaking of biases,
are you getting tired of getting news from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite? How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, whether it's left, right, or center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get a 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights in media bias and political trends. So stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.